looking forward to talking with Eric about Avant Beetle and games as art, because I've been to a bunch of these. I think I've been to all of them.
I think you have. Yeah. Yeah. You're number one fan.
Muy excelente.
Yeah. And I'm also your number one fan as well, because you always help with some resources, getting to know people and all that.
Well, thank you
Wonderful
very
work.
much. We'll do a plug for Siege as I hold up my water bottle to the camera. Thanks, Eric. And so, frankly, I've been a big believer that games are art since even before I started working in the games industry. And I think what Eric has put together proves it again and again. So, Eric, why don't I turn it over to you for a little bit and you just tell us about this whole process. What is Avant Beetle? What's the upcoming event? And how do you choose the games and how you work with the developers? That's not a lot, is it?
No. I mean, I've done this many times, so I almost have it down. Doing a lot of talks with like this stuff. But so Avant Beetle is basically like a gallery exhibit displaying various games that are kind of on like, I call it kind of more like the forefront of sort of the avant-garde, like the underground, like various movements that are going on that aren't quite explicitly like super commercial art, super commercial games. And so basically I try to get any kind of game that either asks the question of like, what are games, or like, what can games be, and like, how can we utilize games in different forms or aspects that are outside kind of like the AAA space, or even the AA or III, whatever you call it. So to kind of like lift those developers up a little bit and kind of like show other game developers, various, just your average person who's like interested in games or interested in art, and like bridge the gap between games, art, yeah, kind of like going in between like things that normally we'll play like in our living rooms, and bring it into an art gallery space where they can everyone kind of like have an understanding of like where these games are in the zeitgeist of games and what they're trying to say. Now I've already lost my train of thought on like some of the other questions, but I can quickly pivot over to like the idea of like video games as art, which to me is kind of maybe like all encompassing for games as like games in general. It's such a big conglomerate of like various art forms. You have like visuals, sound, you have all these other aspects like UX, everything that's kind of like an art form, and then packaging it in interactivity. So that's like one aspect of it. And then like another one where like Avant Beetle kind of comes in is basically, yeah, like looking forward, trying out new things, developing ideas, whether it's like using games as like strictly autobiographical stories, or usage of like personal processing, just to kind of like let the rest of the industry know that like people are making these things that are very like personal to them, and then by design, with it being like very personal, to then kind of be like, this is my art, not mine, but like the developers to say like, this is what I want to show the world. And yeah, to me that's kind of the highest like form of any kind of art form, which is like very personal stories or very personal like attachments to all of it. But as like my job specifically for this is like technically curator. And so what I like to try to do is come up with like a theme, and then basically like go throughout the internet, get recommendations, and collect basically like a trying to think of the word now, kind of like a through line of like, we have a theme, all these games are talking about something or trying to get like a certain message across, and then I can then choose various games to kind of be like, all right, here we've got like for example, with this upcoming event, the Queer Games, we have different games that are kind of like, the ones that are like extremely personal, maybe a little bit heavier, like something that's really like taking a stand. And then other ones that are kind of like more fun, maybe a little playful, like celebratory of queer culture, and everything like in between. And so, yeah, my job as like curator is to kind of be like, all right, this will work here, like, and maybe let's get in like this game, ask around, see what other people recommend, and then come up with a lineup. So yeah, this upcoming game show, there's going to be, I think, there's 10 games, and from developers all over the world. We've got like a couple from like France, Australia. We've got a couple in the US. I think Italy is one. I've got a whole list somewhere, but I don't have it up. But yeah, basically to like know what kind of games that like we want, and to put it in front of everyone to hopefully inspire them, or like at least show them that, here's a set of developers who are trying to do something different in the games industry.
Yep, really like that. And it's been interesting because one of the definitions I've heard of for art, and there's no good definition for art, is something designed creatively that enables us or promotes us to stretch our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual capacities. In other words, it's not just doing the same thing over and over again, but something new, something designed to make us look at the universe, the world, ourselves, our inner person in new ways. And it's funny because games certainly make us feel. That's one of the great things about this as a medium. Any game you play, you start feeling. You become entwined with the game itself. But often people will complain that there's a limited range of feelings and experiences you get out of games. So when you're looking at these games that you're curating, what do you think they are trying to have the player experience? What are they trying to get through? Is it just to tell the developer's own personal experience? They trying to open new pathways of thought? What do you feel they're trying to evoke in the player?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the more interesting questions. Like, especially with a lot of these games where it's kind of per game basis. So like the benefit of a lot of these like kind of like micro indie games, I would kind of call, and some people call it, is like they don't need to have like an audience output or basically like an audience outreach to be like, I need you to feel like these things. It can be just as simple as like I think with the last showcase, there was one game where the developer was kind of like, this was a very personal game to the point where like, I just want to like create a world and like be in that world and just kind of like explore and use it as kind of like a meditation, all the way swinging it into like the other direction of like, there's another game that was in the last showcase that was an indifferent wonder of an edible place, where it's like, this is not like as personal from like development standpoint, but they're trying to like raise awareness for like certain injustices that were going on in India for that game specifically. So like it really runs the whole gambit of like, this is either like just for me and I'm letting it out there in the world just in case anyone else resonates with it, to developers trying to like teach people about like either history or like something that's very important to them. So yeah, it's not the same as like when you get into like more commercial games where like the primary optics for like a good game is like, how well does it sell? Like, how big is the player base? And when you have that, you really need to kind of like stress test like the user experience to make sure that like it's fully commercial and you can like give it to someone and be like, you're gonna have fun with this, like you're gonna enjoy it, There's nothing like there's not as much friction around there. It's like tested. Whereas like these games are very much kind of like not that they don't care or like that's not something that is important to them, but it's like no, it's my voice that I'm sending out to the world.
Yeah, I love that. So some of these games go from the broadest topics to some of the most personal, most introspective ones as well. And you have done reflected on that throughout these series. Can you talk a little bit about the past topics for Avant Beetle and how you've gotten to this point with them? Because you've definitely been, I mean, it's all about stretching the boundaries. So you've been having fun getting people to look way afar of where they would usually look for games.
Yeah. And I guess like question for that, do you mean like the different themes that we've explored in the
Right.
showcases?
Right.
Okay, yeah. So the past shows that we've done is kind of like I think the very first one back in 2018, I believe it was, forever ago, was exploration. So like during that time, there was a lot of like rumblings in the indie sphere of like walking simulators or like things that are just kind of like they're trying to subvert the video game industry to kind of be like let's not have like goals, let's not do that, so like let's just explore and have that. So that was the like various aspects of like what does it mean to like be in a video game and like just explore, like do we need anything, and that's all up to like the developers, and the curation of that show is very much kind of like varying degrees of like how to answer that question. And then the second one I had was Gallery, which was a really interesting one where like every game was a gallery in of itself. So humorously, it's like a gallery within a gallery. And so each of those games had some form of like, here's a bunch of things that like I want you to go around and like experience, whether that's like through gameplay or more traditional like gallery style, like here's a room for this, here's a room for that. These are all various like aspects of kind of like dealing with what is a gallery. And I think the third one was puzzle games, which was really fun, where like various developers take the idea of like what's a puzzle, what's like a fun thing, and then like take their own spin on it. And then the last showcase that I didn't really have so much of it, didn't have like an explicit theme to it, but eventually there became a theme. I called it just the mixtape, mostly because after a long hiatus of not doing these showcases, I just wanted to like get something out there. But if I had to put a theme on it, a lot of it had to do with processing like emotional feelings of yourself, where we had games that were like someone making a game to like help process the like I'm trying to think of the right word. Basically like a father's like attempted suicide when he was young, and then like unpacking all of that, and then like we walk with him in there, and then with other ones that were like kind of raising awareness, like the Indifferent Wonder of an Edible Place, like I said before, which was kind of like processing something that happened in history, and all the way down to this one game called Bus Trip Arcana, which was the game where like they made a game so they could explore and like have their own kind of like meditative moments with it. And so that brings us now to Queer Games, which was this has been like a showcase that I've wanted to make for the last maybe like 3 or so years. But I felt that I didn't have the right curation for it. And then I think around maybe May or so, started reaching out to developers and got a bunch of really good recommendations. And then I was like, all right, let's do the next one. And I'm pleased to say like it's going to be a really good showcase with a lot of really amazing games.
Very cool. Now, you and Brooke Berg are going to stream some of these games for us tonight. Give us a sneak preview. And I'd love to have a conversation briefly between you and Brooke about the games, what kind of experiences they evoke for you. But before we do that, you have seen a lot of people go through Avant Beetle now. Mainly developers, but a lot of non-developers as well. What kind of experiences do you think they have? Are there like general ranges of experiences, invigorated, enthused, befuddled, etc.?
Yeah, I definitely arrange within the caveat of like it's all been really positive. And so for the most part, everyone is at least at the minimum level, kind of like, oh, this is really interesting, like looking at games in a different way. And that's almost like the minimum that I've seen, all the way up to like uh, people being like really inspired by like either all of the games or like one specific game, um, to then kind of be like invigorated and be like, oh, this is like relighting like a creative spark, to have the allowance to basically like do things in your own way, in the way that like you want to do. And then um yeah, like I always enjoy a lot of like college students who come out to this, because I don't, depending on like where what they know about like smaller indie devs, um sometimes if they don't know much about it, like they're like, oh my gosh, this is really cool, like you can take like, and not everything has to be like super polished or like AAA quality to tell like a meaningful story. Because I know, I think when I was in college, like this would have been something that would have just absolutely sparked like creative integrity in me. So hopefully, for anyone coming to the shows, this can kind of like further that for yourselves.
Very cool. Before we bring Brooke into the conversation, Marcy Pratchett has a couple good questions on YouTube. Um, the first one is, as a game dev, can you talk about the choices you make with regards to how much agency you give players when it comes to how you want to sculpt your user experience? And we're not the actual makers of these games, but Eric, can you talk to that? What you have seen, the devs who you have chosen for these? What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it, like, of course, like any of these games, it's definitely a range. Um, and it really all depends on like what they're trying to say about games. And so like we've had various games that are like maybe player antagonistic towards like how everything is set up, and like that's specifically something that like they're intentionally trying to create to further what they're trying to say, either about the content of the game or about the games industry, um and all the way down to um like extremely open, like almost like a toy, because like if in certain games, like let's say like an open world game, yeah, the player agency is kind of like, yeah, go ahead, like do whatever, but there's still always some kind of like goal, and it's always trying to like steer you towards that. Where like some games, like I want you to play with it and like have fun, or like get whatever it is that I'm trying to have you get out of it.
Excellent. Marcy had a follow up to that. And she does it as an example, but I think it's a separate question that deserves to be addressed. How does the
Mhm.
affordances of video games make it different from working in other medium? And certainly we love the interactivity, but I'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, the affordance, without going like just broad stroke, it's the interactivity part of it. I think there's something really powerful about kind of like the development style of video games, because it's very, I want to say, like non-destructive. So, let's say if you're making like a film or like a short film, um, whenever you can make like a cut and then be like, all right, well now we're doing this, and that's like almost like, that's like it is what it is. It's going through this. But like with a game, you can kind of be like, well, let me just update this model, see how it looks. Let me make the walls now just pictures of my dog or something, and you can click it, and so then you can kind of like experiment and play with that. But as for the getting into like the interactivity part of it, which I believe is kind of the most profound aspect of like thinking about art as video games as art, which is like, you're the one steering everything. And like you're the one making the decisions to kind of be like, yes, I will go forward with it. And like I've had conversations with some other people about, like whenever you're playing a game and you just walk forward. And I think one showcase during the exploration, someone was kind of like, well, why don't they just put them on rails? Like, this doesn't have to be interactive. I'm just walking forward. And kind of cheekily, I was like, yeah, but you're the one who's walking forward. Like, you can stop playing, but like, if you want to keep engaging with it, you have to, keep holding down W, or so to say.
Yeah, and there've been movies about people walking inside of pieces of famous artwork. But in this case, you're really doing it. You're actually getting inside. You're looking around a Monet from the inside, going where you want to go in the Monet, checking out the colors and the vibrancy in the way you want to do it. I'm using that obviously as an analogy, but it gives you the chance to really play around with a shared piece of art someone else has created that you get to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Brooke, if you're willing to step on in, Brooke has checked out a couple of these games to stream. I'd love your thoughts, Brooke, just initial impressions of them and why some of them jumped out to you as an artistic creation more than others did.
Hi, I'm Brooke. My pronouns are she and pup. I was honestly looking for those that were wilder or represented me in some other way. So the two that caught my eye, I can't say this one because its name, but He F'd the Girl Out of Me by Taylor McHugh. And the other one, Sex at Alexanderplatz, by Fantasia Malware, which just looks absolutely bizarre in the coolest way. And that was what stood out to me.
Very cool, very cool. As a let's get highfalutin about it. As an artistic creation, did they evoke a certain experience in you that more standard commercial games don't?
I haven't played these yet, but I haven't kind of like seen something like Sex at Alexanderplatz since what Hypnospace Outlaw.
Oh yeah.
So in like the commercial game scene, graphics like this is just few and far between.
All right,
Yeah, and if I might interject, Fantasia Malware, they're in Germany, I think Berlin, if I recall correctly. They've always had this like really wild, like chaotic art style that's been like a through line in all of their games. Yeah, they always deliver. So anyone listening, like go check out Fantasia Malware. They're amazing. Yeah, so you can find Avant Beetle on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. The handles or the ways to find it is just look up Avant Beetle. It's AVANT BEETLE. And you can also go to the website avantbeetle.com. We have links for RSVPs to come out to the show, donations, which I will say the shows are always free, but donations are strongly encouraged, and the donations go to either the developers themselves or a charity of their choosing if they choose to opt out of donations.
We had one more very important question about the games. Brooke, what's your favorite kind of dog?
King Charles Cavalier.
And I think you know who that question came from. All right. Brooke, any last comments? Working on any new projects other than the commercial ones?
I am currently recovering from bottom surgery, and I'm trying to make a game based on my experience, but I'm not very far along, and I'm kind of stumped. So we'll see if that comes to fruition.
Everyone's played surgeon games where the best part was messing up. So, Chanel, any questions for the folks before we end the meeting?
When is the next event?
We'll do our
So-
next GGDA meeting August 13th. We got the Southern Fried Gaming Expo coming up 19th to 21st. James Cole, you are in the chat. If you have any info on the Indie Cluster area at Southern Fried Gaming Expo, please put in there. And there's a really fascinating D&D game being played by our own Bob Carter and a bunch of other voice actors. So that's the Friday night at Southern Fried Gaming Expo. So I strongly recommend checking that out. Too.
So it's not online. I have to attend the event, right?
Right. Southern Fried Gaming Expo is in person at the Cobb Galleria.
But it's on August 13th.
I'm sorry, the August 13th event, we haven't announced yet. That one will be in person. I'll have more information about that when we finalize the details.
Well, you're talking about July 19th to the 21st.
Right. That's the Southern Fried Gaming Expo at the Cobb Galleria. That is the indie clusters organizing the indie game area there. That's not a GGDA event, but it's one that we recommend you go check out games, support indie developers, and start working with them.
Okay. All right, and then August 13th, we'll have the real meeting.
That's exactly right. And we'll have more Siege info then.
Okay, but August 13th will be in person, right?
Yep. More
All right, thank
details
you.
to come. Absolutely. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for asking.
Oh no. Oh, that's totally fine. Much appreciated. Thanks for having me. Bye.